So the rocker panels on the Karmann Ghia, actually they're the inner rockers. The ones that we got are completely different for the Lowlight. Actually, they're the ones that we got, they don't make them for a Lowlight. So the ones that we got are for a later year Karmann Ghia. So what we're doing is modifying the ones that we got to work with the Lowlight. So Jack has been busy as a beaver, cutting these things apart and, you know, making everything he needs to make in order to make the rocker or the inner rocker match what is supposed to be on the car. So Jack, actually, before you even talk about what you're doing right now, where's that template thing? So this is the shape. Where is that? Where's the rocker? The original rocker.
It's buried in the scrap pile.
Okay. So Jack made this template here off of the original inner rocker. So as you can see, that's the shape of it. The shape of the rockers that, where are they? We've already started modifying that one. Oh, the one's back over there? Okay, well, yeah, just run and grab it real quick, just so you can kind of see what's going on. It's been a lot of work to make this stuff work for this car. Like all of the pieces, there's very few things that are available for the Lowlight. Nobody really makes like Lowlight specific stuff. You just, if some of the parts for the later cars work for the Lowlight, then great. But much of the stuff is completely different. So everything that we've been getting, like all the parts, like the repop parts, the stamped parts, they're close, but they're certainly not gonna work for the car. So, and you couldn't even just make them work. And even if you did, you'd be like doing the car like a disservice. So, Jack just grabbed, this is the rocker panel, or the inner rocker that's available. Where's the, let's see, how does it go? Like this? No.
Oh,
where's the front?
This is the front.
Yeah, right, okay. So this is the left side. So this is the shape.
This is what I took off, what was there, and I had to modify it to...
Right, so this is the right side of the car, this side of the car, and this one's for the other side of the car. But just so you can get an idea of the difference in the shape, that's the template for the piece that, you know.
You can see how there's speeds here that they're not supposed to be here. This isn't supposed to be here. This shape is completely wrong. This isn't supposed to be here. And you take your template, we're not even close.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like, it's not even sort of the same shape. So that's like, it looks like an airplane wing.
This is square.
And that's like, it looks like a piece of square stock.
You can see after tuning this all up, taking it from slicing this off, cutting this out, replacing this piece in here, and tuning this all up. If I take the profile gauge, now you can see that matches up how it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. So the piece I'm making over here will be the replacement for this top panel right here.
Yep.
I cut this completely off.
Because we're utilizing these. We talked about making this piece from scratch, which you could, but then we'd still have to put these beads in it, and it would be
this shape, and it'd just be a lot of work trying to make something from scratch that has these indentations when this was made on a drop forge.
Right. So what you got going here is this piece.
Yeah, from the center of this flange where the pan would mount, all the holes were also not in the correct spot.
These holes.
So all the holes, I cut all the tabs out from on the inside. I cut the welds for the plates, and I welded every single hole shut and metal finished them and straightened this all back out. And that's just so I can take this top piece and I can form it, and then I'll put the two together and then scribe a line, and I'll make a nice butt weld in the center of this, which will then create a Lowlight inner rocker panel,
right,
which they don't make.
You'd be welding that super slow, so it doesn't turn into a big giant C.
It's gonna do that anyway. I'm gonna have to do a lot of hammering down.
So with what we have here,
it doesn't seem like that big of a deal because you think of, okay, it's the inside of a panel, you're never gonna see it, so what does it matter if this doesn't look perfect? The problem is the way these rocker panels are put together, they're put together in basically 4 pieces. If we come over to the car, I'll show you what I mean. I have the outer rocker pretty much tuned up. It needs a little bit more fine tuning here and there, but all the modifications that I had to do to this, I made this outer rocker fit. This is the inner, or the sill plate. If we look, this panel on the top, this was that panel that I made a couple months ago. That piece is on there too. So you have the piece of conduit that goes inside there. So really this is a 5-piece rocker panel. You got the sill plate, you got the outer, you got the conduit. So that's 3 pieces.
The conduit runs forward through to here, which is where all the wiring runs through. And then this little notch here is for the wiring to go up through that little stay there and then in.
The dash.
Yeah.
So then you have the inner rocker reinforcement and then the inner rocker, which is what the body mounts up to. So we have 5 pieces that need to all fit together. So when you have little issues like this, they compound, they snowball. And a little tiny bit here means a lot down later on.
This piece, this radius, which it kind of comes down and does like a loop,
You can see a little bit better.
is different on the Lowlight, but what Jack's doing now is that piece.
You can see kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to bend this flange right now where this gets real tight.
Yeah, so this little piece here is what Jack's doing now. But it's not just like a fold. You can't just put it in the brake and fold it over.
Because it's round.
Yeah, because it's, well, right. So
I found these, I've been putting together a bunch of different ideas. Some stuff I tried didn't work. What I came up with here is just 2 pieces of, what is this?
1 by 1.
Yeah, there is a 3/4.
Nope, this is one. Okay. This is 1 by 1 square tubing.
Either way, it's got the same radius on the edge here as the radius of this little point here.
Yep.
So theoretically, if I get this nice and straight, I can chase it afterwards, either with hammer and dolly or maybe another piece of rod. I got a piece of plate in there that, actually I'll grab it right now to show you what I plan on doing. Never throw anything out. I made this piece of plate here with a piece of rod on it, and I'll use this as the dolly. After I break the line, this will go inside of it, and I can bend that over this little by little.
Yep.
Checking with a straight edge, so hopefully we're there. And then you can see the way I had to clamp these together, because clamping this to the table wasn't going to be strong enough, and it wasn't going to keep this from moving around.
Yep.
So I put this through the drill press, and I put bolts that go through the 2 pieces of box steel.
So it goes through the box steel, through the panel,
and into the other piece. So it's all sandwiched together. I'll have to weld these holes back up afterwards, but
yeah,
that's the price you pay for trying to make stuff by hand.
Yeah, that's no big deal.
It's supposed to be made by hand.
Right. Yeah, all this stuff was
stamped in a factory in mass numbers. This is by hand bending with basic tools.
Right. The later ones, the later Lowlight stuff's available, but not for the Lowlights.
And who's to say that even if this was a later one, this still probably wouldn't fit because, you know, it's aftermarket.
Yep.
You always run into discrepancies.
Yeah, it looks like the part, but then when you go to put the part on the car,
yeah, stuff's oversized, stuff's not in the right spot.
Not even close. Well, yeah, so this shape here is a piece of, what is this, 1 5/8? I can't remember.
This is a piece of 1 5/8 pipe.
Cut in half.
And I welded that along with a piece of 1/4 inch rod to this piece of plate. And that's how I got the initial shape.
This shape.
This area.
Yep.
And
so this piece is all made from a flat piece of sheet metal.
yes.
So yeah, this nice radius here that's, you know, completely uniform all the way down was basically just bent over this pipe, and that's sort of what gives it the shape that it needs.
That started the shape. I had to do a lot of fine tuning because the problem with this shape, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but this radius is different from this radius. So yes, I can bend this shape on that fixture, but I had a hard time trying to bend this shape.
Yep.
So I ended up having to take that panel off, get a soft piece of wood, and I used my bossing hammer to stretch this, or I don't know if it so much as setting the arrangement of this shape. And then I had to go back and metal finish that all by hand, hammer dolly. Which it's not completely metal finished. It's roughed out, I'd say, just to give us a general shape. I'll tune it up a little bit more as I go on, but for now it's close enough.
Well, it's looking awesome, Jack. It's unfortunate we couldn't just start with a few $100 set of aftermarket rockers that were even close that we could modify, but this is basically having to make them from scratch, but that's the only way that we could do it. So
basically, you're only using 20% of the aftermarket piece, and everything else is either modified or made from scratch.
Yeah, well, it's looking awesome, Jack, so good job. I'll let you get back to it. So as you can see, Jack's got a ton of work into making parts from scratch. That's what has to happen when you're doing a restoration on a car where parts simply just don't exist. You know, it's like I said a minute ago, like obviously, yeah, we wish we could just get the parts and that way we'd be that much closer, but since we can't even get them, Jack's got to make them from scratch.
There. This is left long, so it's okay if it has a little bit of a crease in it from the back side of this piece, which that'll all get trimmed off eventually. So
So yeah,
the main focus is getting this crease nice and straight and uniform with no dents. Hence why I'm using a rubber hammer.
And then to finish this off, so obviously it's not getting bent over because there's not a 1-inch thing here. It's almost a 180. So that's what Jack was talking about with
it's over here.
With this. So this is what's going to finish what he's doing right now. So this is going to then go in like this, and then he can basically, yeah, like kind of like that. So it'll just get wrapped around and make like a little 180 around that piece of whatever it is. What is that, eighth or quarter? Or eighth or 3/16? It's quarter?
Yeah, it's quarter rod, quarter plate.
Cool. So Jack was just saying how he's learned a new trick with the TIG torch and basically shrinking with the heat from the TIG torch, turning the amperage all the way down. But so this piece had kind of a bend to it. So Jack had to straighten it back out. So,
which I couldn't fit it in a standard Lancaster style shrinker stretcher because of the shape that was already put into it. So that I tried tuck shrinking it. You can see some of these marks here. That was from trying to tuck shrink it, but it was very difficult to try to straighten these back out without undoing the shrink. So I ended up having to planish all these back out and start basically where I started from again. Use the TIG torch.
And it's using the heat to shrink it.
And you can see now, if you put that back down, you see now it's nice and pretty damn near close to straight. I'm not going to say perfect, but
I mean,
nothing's perfect.
I don't think you could fit a piece of paper in there, you know? And before it was like, you know,
yeah, it was all over the place because I'm wrapping around that piece of pipe, and I had to do the same thing for this shape, you know?
It's almost like you know what you're doing.
Don't say that.
Completely winging it. Just throwing shit at the wall until it sticks.
more or less.
That's not true at all. You know what you're doing. The biggest thing is just understanding how metal works and then figuring out a way to do what needs to be done. So
this doesn't really have any kind of an area value change. It's a straight piece.
yeah,
You know, just the way that I'm bending it, I have to try to be able to keep it straight without stretching it, because if you stretch it, you're adding area to it,
yep,
and that screws with everything.
right,
So trying to do this and bend it around all these radiuses, you have to keep track of the radiuses, but you also have to keep track of how much material you're using, because as you wrap the sheet metal around your radius, you're using that length of material.
yeah,
So you have to be able to measure how much it's going to use for the bend.
right,
So what I did, I threw the piece out already because it was roached, but when I started, I took a piece of tape. If this was the original piece where I wanted to break it, I put the piece of tape and I wrapped it around the shape, and I marked the peak of where the radiuses were.
yeah,
Then when I peeled it off,
You had your length.
you have a two-dimensional representation of your length,
Yep.
which then you can put onto, this was a blank flat piece of metal when I started.
yeah. So, and a lot of the stuff that, you know, that Jack's doing here, you know, it's always kind of like a, what's the best way to go about this?
It's a puzzle.
Yeah, it's a puzzle. So sometimes, like, you know, in many cases, you know, Jack will say, what do you think about doing it this way? And we like talk about it because, you know, it's not always the first thing that pops into your head is like, this is how we're going to do it. Like this morning, Jack and I were talking about how we're going to do what he's doing right now. And, you know, we had a couple different ideas. One was to use like a tipping die in the bead roller just to kind of get it started, to like tip it. So that was like an option. Sure, that might work, but then we didn't have like the right radius tipping die. Normally, and a tipping die is gonna like put like a kind of like almost score the metal. And then if we had like a fatter die, which we didn't have, so that didn't work. And then we just kind of bounced ideas back and forth with the best way to go about doing it. And
sometimes you get an idea in your head that seems like it's going to be the best idea to move forward, and you act upon it. So this is what I started working on this morning, was just making a piece of plate that was the same length as the rocker panel and putting this this length of 1/4 inch, much like this piece that I already made and that dolly that I made. The problem was that I wasn't careful enough when I welded it, so now if you want to hold that up on that side, you can see that just from putting those few beads on it.
Yeah, I'm holding it tight on this edge, and he's holding on that edge. So now this piece, it was straight, and now it looks like a big U. So this was the original idea of how we were going to go about, or how Jack was going to go about doing that. But just from this little bit of welding here, is totally bent this whole piece. And this is thick. This is 1/4 inch plate. I mean,
I think it's thicker than that. I think this is 3/16.
Oh yeah, it might be.
So this rod's 1/4 inch, and it's.
Oh right.
It's a little bit thicker than the rod. Quarter.
Yeah. Well, it might be even thicker. But regardless, I mean, you can see it. I mean, visually see it. It's it looks like a samurai sword now. Maybe this is what you should make this a samurai sword.
Only 10,000 times.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely
some ideas don't work.
Right, and this would have probably worked pretty well, but it's just unfortunate. And then maybe, you know, if we used a piece that was thicker or wider.
That's why I think I didn't have as much problem with this piece, because this piece, although it's thinner, it's wider.
Yep.
And I also have this piece of pipe that also helps keep things straight.
Yeah, almost acted as like a heat sink too. You know, and the welds, you can see here, the welds here are only like, you know, probably 1/2 inch at each little interval. I mean, this is just even, you know, probably 1/4 inch of attack, and he kind of put a little bit longer weld on here, which just heated everything up a little bit more.
Too much.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I think that this would have worked very similar to that, I think, but you know, it didn't work with what we had or what we started with. So anyways, if you're learning anything, like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, I'll ask Jack, or I'll try to answer them. Anyways, have a good one. Thanks.